What is the topic again?
Oh, the tortured artist.
Oh, that's right. That wasn't a joke. I legitimately forgot,
gosh.
just for a second, it was that thing where, you get the camera on you, or you're asked a question by the teacher, and you know the answer, but you're like, uh-oh, and you just drop your marble. I spilled my spaghetti.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've had that experience, but for a minute I did, and it was one of those things where we just put this video together so quick. Anyway,
We put it together so quick, past tense. We're so confident in the video, we refer to it in past tense before it's filmed.
Exactly. So, what comes to mind when you think of tortured artists? What is your initial reaction when people use that term?
I don't like it. It puts a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
I think of young dead people, and I think of miserable people and abusers and people who do drugs and just unhappy ends, because I think it's a really harmful stereotype mostly. I think there's a grain of truth to it, and I'm not saying that you can't have struggles in life and be an artist, but I think that we romanticize the idea of the tortured artist too much. And I think of things like the 27 Club and all that, and I don't see those as success stories. I don't see Jim Morrison dead in a bathtub as a success story. I would rather see Jim Morrison get older and fatter and become a washed up has-been than dead at 27. And I think about that, people say, how would Kurt Cobain be today in the modern culture? How would Tupac be? Would Biggie Smalls still be relevant? I'm like, I don't care. They'd still be alive. And regardless if I like their art or not, it'd be a human being living, hopefully happier.
Yeah, they would be okay, and
their families wouldn't cry a few times a year on the dates of their birth and death.
Yeah.
So that's good enough for me.
I mean, for me personally, when I think torture artist, I think Van Gogh. And I say that because during the 20 minutes of research I did while putting this video together, I Googled torture artist, and his picture was the first thing that came up. So, and that whole idea, again, of romanticizing the idea of tortured artists, and that perpetuating that idea of, you're going through some kind of bad situation, you're in a bad state mentally, and therefore, it's sort of that default belief that, okay, you're an artist, that clearly means you're going through something horrible mentally. I'm not entirely in any way enthusiastic about that idea. It just seems like a myth that just keeps getting perpetuated. To me, that's just what I think when it comes to torture artists. And so I guess that kind of leads to my next point.
Oh, I had another point about that.
What were you gonna
and a bad movie pitch. The point was that I think that it leads to people making a self-perpetuating myth where people don't work on themselves as human beings in order to be this tortured artist or something, or they indulge too much in these negative feelings, which I think is very harmful, and basically doubling down. If they naturally do feel depression or something, I think some people might be encouraged almost to indulge it in self-destructive ways rather than productive ways, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
And my bad movie pitch is there's going to be two. There's one that's kind of a horror movie or something, almost like a torture porn, like Hostel or Saw. And it's maybe there's a torture chamber, and it's these people being psychologically messed with, and you find out that they're all artists and they're paying to go to these torture rooms, like an escape room almost situation, in order to do this so they would create better art.
Oh my gosh.
And the other one would be more of kind of like a comedy kind of thing, like Election, I guess you could say, with Matthew Broderick, where a guy he's a failed artist, and he thinks it's because he hasn't suffered enough in life, because he's privileged, as the kids say. So he self-sabotages his own life. So he ends his marriage, and he tries to become a drinker, but he's not a natural drinker. So he struggles with alcoholism, as in he struggles to become an alcoholic.
Oh my god.
And he just wrecks his life so that he could hopefully make this masterpiece.
Oh my gosh. Adrian Brody did that. Back when I think he was in The Pianist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is true or not, but entirely. But he was saying he ended his relationship. He ended up and just did all this really terrible stuff to himself so that he could be so emotionally distraught he could be in this movie. I don't know, but your idea sounds better. So we're just gonna go from there.
Well, Adrian Brody's got him money.
Yeah.
So
That's true. So with that being said, do you see yourself as being a tortured artist, or did at any point you see yourself that way?
I don't think I did. I think I've always resented that idea. I think I've always really disliked it because it felt like an objectification, at least for me. And I remember, like, there were points where, like, usually you don't get cool cred for writing books and all that.
Yeah.
But the brief moments I have experienced anything like that, it is like you're put in that box where it's like, oh, you're the emo artist with this kind of hair and these books. And I'm like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable and just weird with that. I don't like having my picture taken because I hate everything about me. And that's how I feel when I was talked about that way by certain people. Where, like, I felt so uncomfortable and unnatural in the way I was being framed. And I do have, I don't know, struggles or whatever, the same way that anybody in life might. I think I'm a lot luckier than most people, but I guess for me, I always saw it as a very negative term that you should go against. And I've never created anything out of depression. I can't say that it's ever helped me in any way. I say that everything I've done has been in spite of it, is the big struggle that I have. I would say, you know, my natural issue, I was diagnosed with a major depressive disorder when I think it was like 14, I think. And that has never helped me in any way. It's always just been like, you know, cinder block shoes essentially that I have to drag around, where I want to stay in bed all day. I don't want to get up. Watching a movie for me feels like running a marathon because it takes so much out of me, energy-wise. That doesn't help me write books. I say that my writing's a symptom of my mental disorder. It's a symptom, but that's the manic episodes and the obsessive compulsiveness. I don't think the depression helps at all. I don't think that you know, bad relationships or whatever childhood issues that I might have had or didn't have affected in any positive way. I think that, you know, art is inspired by life experiences, so it is natural to have that. There's a Bright Eyes lyric, something like, what is it? You can't get flowers without the rain or something like that. And I get that. I see that, and I think it is necessary to have some life experience that isn't comfortable or pleasant. But I don't think that being tortured itself is beneficial in my experience.
Well, let me think. I would say that currently, no, I don't see myself as being a tortured artist. And I would say back in the day, like if you asked me a year ago, I'd say yes. And for the longest time, I would say I was a torture artist because of just everything I was going through. And it was probably the most unproductive period of my life. I, like you said, have produced nothing during that period of my time. Part of the reason, outside of imposter syndrome and performance anxiety, the reason my book has been taking so long is because of like that torture artist kind of thing. And because I was also diagnosed with major depression. I've been struggling with it for like 14 years now, and it's something I like. So few people watch these videos, so I'm like, okay, I'll mention it. And
See, all my whole family does. It's so weird.
Okay.
Yeah, and they all think it's like adorable or whatever. It's weird. I saw a lot of my family,
nice.
And they were all like, "We watch your videos. It's so great." They thought, my aunt thought that it was like a Christian promotion thing, and she was. I said, "Yeah, it's funny. These are promotional videos, but I think they promote people not to work with us." She's like, "What's it promoting? The faith?" I was like, "No, my company, just making money."
That's so nice.
It is really nice. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's just a funny thing.
I mean, I appreciate anybody watching your videos too, so that is really nice. But anyway, sorry, I feel like I was going on this tangent. And I thought that whole idea of being the torture artist, like, it was mandatory for me to feel this way in order to produce art at all, or even good art. And the longer I stayed in it, the worse I felt, and it got to the point where in 2018 it was like my all-time low. And I mean, of course you remember it, because you had to sit through half of it, but I was just so miserable, so burned out, that I was like, okay, if being an artist means that I have to be miserable, if it means I have to be feeling this way, then I don't I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be an artist anymore. I just want to get better, even if it means just giving up art. It was kind of like this myth and this lie that, you know, they tell you about, okay, you can only produce good art if you are just perpetually miserable, if you are in pain all the time. And I'm like, it's either, like, they treat it like this dichotomy, like you have to choose between being happy and being healthy, or being an incredible artist. And I'm like, I really don't agree with that in any way, but that's just me.
I think what's funny to me is I'm always happy when I'm writing.
Yeah.
Even like when I'm writing like really messed up stuff or really like crazy stuff, like the book I put out this year, I'm happy. It doesn't weigh on me. It doesn't do anything. I'm just very content doing that in a way that I'm not any other time. And this is why I go back to the OCD thing, is because I think I'm only happy when I'm obsessed. When I'm obsessed with a show, when I'm obsessed with a new album that came out or a book I'm writing, I'm happy. That's me at my absolute peak emotionally. So when I'm writing a book, usually, unless I'm just really struggling with it and it's tough, it's like you're going to the gym on a day you're really sore already, and you feel like you're just beating yourself up. Other than those days, and I have had books that felt like that almost every day I sat down to write them, I'm pretty content writing and creating. I'd say I'm maybe only happy in those ways, or in those phases of my life, because it is very, I'll write like 100 pages in 2 weeks, and then I won't write for like 3 months, and then I'll do that again, and I don't know, it's weird. There's a quote in Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, and the movie ends on this, actually, which is an interesting place to end the movie. Even though the ending of the book's very beautiful, and it's a very pro-socialist kind of message, where one breastfeeds an older man. It's a very fascinating image that Steinbeck uses. And it was also my first award I ever won. It was an essay on this book. As academic decathlon. I don't know which year, but that was probably one of the best experiences of my life. Not winning the award, but that program, Academic Sports League, it's called, and very big supporter of that whole thing. Anyhow, that's unrelated. But the quote is that I'm trying to think how to put it. I'm just not going to try to say it verbatim because I don't remember it any longer. But the mother is saying how men, they go through changes like jerks, and they struggle with change and to adapt. But women, it's like a stream, and they just flow with change. And I don't know. I'm not going to speak on that personally, but that is how as a male artist, that is how I feel. It's a jerk, a sudden shift.
Okay, so I'm going to move on and ask then, because now that I'm thinking about it, would you say that you need to suffer in order to produce great art?
It's funny because I do a little. Like I said, with life experience, do I think, this is going to be something that's going to get me in trouble. It's going to be the worst thing I ever say on this show. Taylor Swift wrote great songs about heartbreak before she had her first heartbreak. And that might be the most controversial thing I ever say. When she was just a little cute 14-year-old girl, with her acoustic guitar, wrote Tim McGraw and all that. I don't think she had that true first-hand experience at that point. She always says she didn't. I don't know at that point in her career, and I don't think she needed it. But I do think you need life experience in all those ways. Did George Lucas need to go to space to write Star Wars? Yes, he did.
Yes.
And that's why it was so realistic. But for smaller things, like the human experience, I don't know that that's necessary, but I think it is. I think you need somewhere to draw from, even if it's not the exact thing you're writing about, or you need a secondhand account that you can transcribe. But here's what got me today, and this is when I really started to think about this topic, when I told you that this would be a fun one to do a video on. A lot of the best art ever written were odes. Think about like John Donne and all that, like very like spiritual writing. Do you necessarily need to suffer for that? Because that's just a celebration. And maybe you do. Maybe you do need to taste the dirt to see the sky, or whatever that quote is. You need that contrast to truly understand why something's good because you've seen the absence of it. You know it's dark until you've seen the light, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a strong argument both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see it both ways. I see, obviously, to your point, the needing life experience or having some kind of experience to draw from. But I guess one example I'll say pro-suffering would be...
Pro-suffering?
Pro-suffering.
That sounds like a cool band name.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, let's start a band. But it's called Sometime Around Midnight. It's by Airborne Toxic Event. It's from their self-titled album. It's basically, the entire album is about the lead singer's breakup with a girl, but this one song is like the most prominent track. Like, everybody plays it. And most people know about it, but it's sort of about like when he runs into his ex at a bar and he realizes that he's still in love with her. And it's this painful, and it's a genius song because you could definitely tell the way it was composed that he was still very much in that peak emotional turmoil. And I think in that way, creating art during a time when you're, in a bad situation, like, okay, you can, like, powerful things can come during that period of time, and those kinds of things can help you cope with being in that time, having a way to channel that creative energy. But I don't believe that you should force yourself into a position of suffering or delay getting help or delay recovery because you think it'll help you create better art.
Yeah, and that's what's so tough for me, and where I struggle, is that a lot of my favorite art was born directly of suffering. Clive Barker's Cold Heart Canyon. The protagonist in the book, who's named Todd, which is a very wise choice on his end, is going through the loss of his pet dog. And Clive Barker recently, he wrote the book, or rewrote it, after his father passed away. To kind of reflect those themes of mourning and everything. And that's in my opinion, that's one of his best books. I really adore that book. Clive Barker, yeah, he also made the album 808s and Heartbreak by Kanye West, which was after a very horrible breakup and the loss of his mother and other tragedies in his life. And I think that album's so powerful. And it couldn't exist without that suffering, I don't think. As well as his other stuff, I think he almost needed that loss. But I think that's different to do that and go through it than to get stuck in this kind of Ubermenschian cycle of the tortured artist. The self-tortured artist, maybe,
Yeah.
is the thing that I fear. Or the stigma that you have to be tortured to do it, because, I don't know, I don't relate to that at all. I don't think it's true. And I do think that great art can be born of suffering, but I don't think it has to be. I don't think it's a necessary ingredient for all art. Even my own art, I've really been rethinking so much of it and planning so much of it and getting away from that, where I really want it to be... It's a strange concept I'm developing. It's almost a Randian deist approach to art, which is probably a new concept, where it's basically about... It's a celebration of what man can achieve, but in an altruistic sense, of just doing your best to make the best art, to celebrate art itself. And for me, rather than necessarily an explicit religious point of view, it's art itself as the religion. Okay, Homer, you better just stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
He had that on for a while, and I could have let him go, but I wasn't going to.
No.
Anyhow.
Okay, sorry. Am I interrupting you?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. That was basically unrelated, but I guess it was kind of related. But I guess my point is, like, I don't want to be a tortured artist. I don't want to be sad or depressed or always have something going on. I had this talk with my roommates the other day. I said, I want to be bored. Seriously, I want to come home, watch my silly videos, and then go to sleep. I mean, not forever, but like, I'd like to meet somebody who could tolerate me without having to cheat on me to deal with it, to cope, and then have that integrated in my life. But even then, the happiness. Do you need art to be a tortured artist thing? I think about that with relationships, where it shouldn't be, I'm unhappy, therefore I need you in my life.
Yeah.
It should be, I want to share my happiness with you.
Something that adds to your life.
Yeah, and you add to theirs in a productive,
Yeah.
healthy way.
Yeah.
And you can't be unhappy about something. If you have a great relationship and ends and you're unhappy, that's not quite the same as what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be a hostage situation.
Yeah. And I want to give a more general example of, okay, pro not suffering being a tortured artist. Like, memoir. A lot of memoir is written, like, not all of it, but many memoirs I've come across were written about trauma, about difficult situations in life, and in a way it helps them, how do I say this, to move past something, you know, to recover, to heal, to, you know, and then they not only take that and write it down, they actually share it with other people, and then they can relate and have that experience. And I think a lot of memoir is written by looking back on past experiences. So you have gone through that period of suffering, that period of that trial, or whatever it is, now you're writing about. Now you're taking some time backing away from it and trying to make sense of it so you can move on, or deal with any unresolved emotions, or, you know, not letting that fester. So I think, but no, I don't think you should needlessly inflict pain on yourself just because you think it would make good art. I don't know, it's like...
Well, on the point of memoirs, you know, you have stuff like I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, which is a brilliant autobiographical novel.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot that I read in college, which is great. They're kind of lesser known. Makes Me Want to Holler by Nathan McCall is one of my favorites. Sag Harbor. This is all the same class, but every book that we read in that class was amazing. Sag Harbor by Colson Whitehead is my favorite book of the past decade. And it's very autobiographical, but it's told fictionally. And those other ones I named had a lot of suffering and struggle. Sag Harbor, on the other hand, is just... my family had this kind of middle-class summer home where we go with other families, and we would just have fun adventures, and it's recounting those. And I think, you know, memoirs, they are important for that kind of thing, and that kind of struggling and suffering. And I think it's important to show that exists in the world, and to show these different narratives that people have lived, and also so people could relate, say, oh, I'm not the only person who's been through this, or, you know, I'm not the only person who's felt this way, or whatever. I'm trying to think, it's really on the tip of my tongue, and I wish the title was just shorter because I could remember it, but it's about one of the writers on Parks and Recreation, and he was going to be on Aziz Ansari's show after that, Master of None. Aziz did the foreword on the book, and he was I think he's a heroin addict, and it's written by his sister, and he died. Really good stand-up comedian too. He's a really funny guy, and that was a really great book that, you know, I read as kind of research for the book that I wrote this past year. But what about success stories and memoirs too? You know, people like to read that as well. And there is the underdog thing. You could say, oh, well, is it success if they never struggled? And I get that. But also some people could write a book about their life with that. That's not pure, you know,
Yeah.
torture. So I think it goes both ways.
So, what role has art played in your life as you've been going through difficult situations? And would you say during that time, has it helped or hurt your well-being?
I don't know if I have an answer to that. It's such a strange, abstract thing for me. Because art's just my life all the time.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about it. I'm always listening to a song or watching a movie or reading something. Or if I'm not, I'm thinking or talking about it. It's so tied to every part of my life pretty much in some way that I don't even realize it a lot of the time. And so it's hard for me to separate one from the other in any way. You know, on one hand, I think it caused a lot of suffering, because if it wasn't for art, I would just get a normal job and I'd just make a lot more money, and, you know, I'd probably be settled down right by now and all that. So I'm living a strange, vagabondish life because of art, which has caused a lot of suffering. So I'm not built for that. I don't want that life. I don't want some weird, stupid, foolish rock star lifestyle or something. I don't strive for that. That is a nightmare to me. I would much sooner die than live Bukowski's life. I don't idolize that at all. That horrifies me. So in that way, it hasn't helped much. A lot of the things that make me unhappy with my life, and my life's good, but the things that I do wish were better are a direct result of me pursuing art as a professional vocation. On the other hand, it makes me happy so much on an everyday level, or on every moment level even, that it's hard for me to fathom living without it. Even if I had all those things, would I be happy? I probably would, because you don't know that you crave something if you haven't tasted it before. But I don't know. I can't even say the role that life has, or art has in my life, because it's just so closely knit to it. Like, what role does peanut butter have in Reese's? I don't know, I sound like that guy in Perks of Being a Wallflower. I don't write poetry. Poetry writes me. I feel that way. But
gosh,
I'm trying so hard not to be.
I can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about.
The guy that's dating Emma Watson, I believe. He's dating her, isn't he?
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah.
Sam, I think, is her character's name.
Yeah, that's her character's name. But I think it was like Caleb or something like.
It's been far too long. I really like that. I like that guy a lot. I like that. I love the Wonder movie. We saw him do a talk, and it was really cool.
Stephen Chbosky.
Yeah.
I mean the character of the guy in the movie. I can't remember his name.
That was Stephen Chbosky, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was the character's name.
No. Oh my gosh, the guy.
Oh, that's who I was talking about.
Oh my
I didn't mean the.
Alright, oh my gosh. Okay, moving on. For me, like, art playing a role in my life during a typical situation, it didn't. It had no part in my life when I was going through the shit I went through last year, and I think that was a lot of the problem. Like, when you're depressed and you're going through, or you're just going through a difficult situation, one of the symptoms, the bigger symptoms of depression, the early warning signs, is you lose interest in things that you enjoy.
See, and can I say something? That's me 1,000% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, it's something I enjoy, like going out for a social event or reading a book. For me, reading a book feels like lifting 1,000 pounds. It is so difficult to do anything. I've been going to write an article for like last week. It's a really positive, fun article I'm so excited about. I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I cannot do it. I can't bring myself to do it. And I'm lying in bed just eating cough drops like they're M&Ms. And I want to do something and I can't. I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
to give that personal experience. I had to.
Like, it's a period of time where I had no energy to even write anything. I had so many distracting thoughts, like, just so many, like, the whole, did I leave the stove on? This person, I'm thinking of stuff from, like, 4 years ago that's upsetting me, having, like, these crying spats and stuff like that, and it was just so difficult and so distracting. And, one of the things that, like, they recommend you do, like, as you're going through this time of your life and you're trying to recover, is by engaging in creative activities. That's why art therapy is such a powerful thing. Like, I have a friend who actually runs workshops for people with, like, PTSD, and helps, like, them through getting through that. And books like Writing Yourself Whole and all these other, like, even the concept of journaling, just as a creative outlet to help get those feelings out of you. And it's just, again, that whole, I wasn't doing any of that. I was just wallowing in that, like, weird pit of self-pity. So it was, like, very negative for my well-being to not have that in my life. And I think, because, for me, art was like breathing. Like, it was, like, before writing, art was my first love in life. And then writing became something I fell in love with. And I wasn't doing either. Just being cut off from the thing that you loved just was causing me tremendous unhappiness on top of all the unhappiness I was already feeling. And it was like, in writing the book I've been writing, I deal with a lot of difficult themes. I talk about, like, depression, alcoholism, like, prescription medication use. Like, most of the main cast of my book, they're all depressed. They all have something going on, that some big emotional hurdle for each person. And writing this book has helped me make sense of the things that have led to the creation of this book. And however, I don't think I could have written the book while I've been depressed or during last year. I think I had to survive and get through last year in order to be able to get to a point now where I can, and actually, again, back to our last point, just taking some distance from it and being able to move and write it and find a way to move forward by using this experience at least for something positive.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing in that way, like art therapy and all that stuff, because it's hard to get into our own perspectives or experiences with anything without feeling as though we're somehow talking for other people or something, which isn't the case here.
Yeah.
I'm not describing universal
No.
experiences. I'm only speaking from my own very personal one. So, if you've had a different perspective, you should comment. And you're not going to. All 10 of you viewers aren't going to comment.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves. But I'll say it anyhow because the window is there. So do you got anything else to add on this one particularly?
No, I'm good. The only thing I'm worried about is hopefully I didn't go too much of my own experience, because it's hard to talk about a topic like the topic of the tortured artist and not involve your personal experience, just because at risk of coming off as like inauthentic or insensitive. But I mean, like I said, like you said, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of experience. It's just depends on person to person.
One last thing I'll say before the video ends is that one thing that helps us, makes us very happy, and look forward to the future, is the upcoming release of Lexi's book, The Electra Complex. So look forward to that in February. And we'll be talking about it in every single video that we do,
All right.
that I'm in. I'll make sure of.